Okay, welcome to our webinar here on selling on pause, listing strategies to succeed during social distancing. My name is Susan Glens, and I lead the Susan Glens team, and I have my amazing business partner with me, Chelsea Moffitt. Chelsea leads our home selling division. Hi, Chelsea.
Hi, Susan.
Hi. So what we wanted to do, and we're recording this so that we can share this with all you guys, is we just wanted to have a conversation about some of the things that we're learning during this time, some of the wins and failures that we've had, and really zone in on the process of selling a listing and some of the success that we've had inside of that, because selling during this time of social distancing has created some challenges, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so before we launch into some of the tactics, which I know everybody wants tactics, right? They want something they can write down and be able to execute. I want to get into mindset first, because mindset is the foundation of everything we do. And if we don't have the right mindset during this time, we're not going to be successful no matter what tactics we execute, right, Chelsea? So let's just kind of back up. In New York State, we've been in this state of pause where we haven't been able to interact face-to-face with our clients in person for 4 weeks now. Today is the end of week 4. I don't know about you, but I'm going a little crazy. And so we've had a lot of time to get our heads around this, and it's been a journey, right? Ups and downs. But what I remember, can you think back, Chelsea, to that first announcement, when it was first announced that Sunday, March 22nd, as of 8 p.m., we were not going to be able to do business as usual, no more showings, no more appointments in person. Can you remember what was going through your head at that time and kind of the mindset that we established as a team pretty early on?
Yeah. So when that all rolled down, just as a confession, it was really nerve-wracking to think, how is this going to affect business? How is this going to affect my sellers, the buyers, the deals that we already had pending? And just the uncertainty was really overwhelming, and processing through what's the very next right thing to do in order to gain some sort of control over the situation that felt really out of control. So from the beginning, I think as a team, what we did is we pulled together and we came up with, okay, what are the 3 things we're going to focus on? What are the 3 things, kind of the cornerstone of our business and our core principles that are going to help guide us when we make decisions of what to do next and how to move forward? And that's how we came together as a team. But as an individual, I thought, I'm going to have to get really creative as a listing agent, because people are going to want answers from me as soon as possible. So I had to double down and really focus on what technology do we have at our disposal? How am I going to track the market so that I can assure sellers to, yes, this is a good time to move forward, or we might want to put our plans on pause. And how was I going to break down the information so that I can really consult them at a high level and give them the very best advice in such a really strange and odd world?
Yeah. So there was this initial feeling of panic, right? Because you're out of control. We've never been here before. Then we had to sit back and digest the information, and we had to make a conscious decision. We had to make a decision about what our priorities were. And then once we outlined those priorities, which we can share what those were for ourselves as a team, we had to then make an active choice to work with the cards we were dealt and make the best of it.
Absolutely.
And that's an active choice, because you can sit back and say, oh, this is happening to me, or you can say, this is happening for me. And what are the gifts that I'm going to get out of this?
Sure.
I remember calling you one day, and we were having a conversation around all of the new things that you were implementing into the listing process. Mm-hmm. And I said, Chelsea, as crazy as this is, and we were probably 3 or 4 days in at this time, I think. So still a lot of unknowns, still a lot of, oh crap, what's going to happen with our jobs? There was this feeling of, this is fun again. Not that we ever lost its fun, but from a building a business standpoint, we were in this kind of, I don't want to say coasting phase. I'm looking for a different word, but we had our systems down. We knew how to take listings and how to sell them for top dollar, and we had our systems down. This forced us to kind of start from scratch and rebuild.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We were in momentum. And I
Thank you.
think
That's the word.
what I couldn't have anticipated from the very beginning is those gifts that you had referenced around what am I going to pull from this? How is this going to make us better? And I'm excited to share that with you and tell you kind of my key takeaways and skills that I will use for the rest of my career, really.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, so before we dive into that, let me just kind of make sure that we establish what our priority was as a team so that we can just kind of lay the groundwork there so that people watching know that we did establish priorities that we want to fall under when we're making decisions going forward. So first and foremost, especially in this state of pandemic, the number one priority has to be health and safety. And I want to make sure we say out loud that not every agent, a real estate agent or other professional that might be working from home right now is going to feel safe going out into the community, right? And we need to make sure we come from a place of non-judgment, that everybody has their decision to make and we respect their decision. We as a team decided health and safety is absolutely number one. And buyers and sellers are still going to need us. In fact, for the people that still have to buy and sell during this undetermined amount of time, they need us even more. So we have to put health and safety first, not only of our community, but of our team members, right, and our own families. And there's got to be a way to help people while keeping them safe and healthy, right? So that was number one. Number two was productivity of our agents. And that was really around all hands on deck in terms of keeping our agents productive, whether it was making care calls to our clients and checking in on them and loving them, or helping our existing clients or looking for new clients that need help. It's all around keeping productivity because we know that productivity breeds, what's the word I'm looking for? Like when you have consistency inside of your routine and you're focused on the right things, that breeds healthy mindset, that breeds energy, right? We wanted to keep the ship moving forward than sink into a spot or move backwards.
Yeah, being purposeful.
Being purposeful. Yeah. And if we can keep our agents productive, then that's helping more people in a safe and healthy way that we know how to control. That's bringing money into our agents to feed their families, which is bringing money into our operations and admin team to help feed their families. So it's a trickle down effect, right? And then do you remember what our third pillar was that we wanted to focus on, Chelsea?
So it was health and safety, productivity, and then now you put me on the spot.
I know, growth.
Growth.
It was around making sure that we are not just focused on the present, but we are focused on growing. And that doesn't necessarily have to only mean growing the business. Yeah, we want to grow through this time. We want to grow personally, right? As just as much as professionally. So making sure we're looking at ourselves saying, how can we use this time to read more books, to educate ourselves, to, for me, it was cook better meals and grow it into a more healthy person. So making sure we're having that dialogue as a team was really important for us.
Absolutely.
Do you want to add to that?
No, I think that really encompasses our focus and everyone's interpretation of, like you said, growth and productivity. It varies person to person, but we're all working towards one common goal.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So let's shift gears a little bit and get more specific, because I think people really want to hear about what are some of the specific strategies and tactics that you're using to see success in this market. So where do you want to start?
So I think that if you're an agent who is watching this and this is new for you, the very first thing that I went to was my existing transactions, and I wanted to make sure to have conversations with the agents on the other side, the buyer's agents. I want to know, what do they do for work? I want to talk to the loan officer. I need some reassurance to pass on to my sellers that these are secure deals, so that we know, okay, do we have to implement plan B? Do we have to get ready to remarket this property? Because marketing the property now is different than it was a week ago, 2 weeks ago. So I have to have those folks that are already under contract. I need to have an idea in my mind of what happens if this deal falls through and we need to move forward with a fresh plan. So that was number one. The next thing that I wanted to do is I needed to look at every single step of my process that I take a seller through from beginning to end, from the very first moment that we meet all the way to the closing table. And I had to look at each step and parse out what needs to change. And it was a really good majority of what we were doing needed to change to make sure that it was virtual, make sure that we're doing what we can with the tools that we have, operating under the restrictions and guidelines that have been passed down. So first things first, look at your pending clients. The next thing that I wanted to do, and it took me, I would say I just buckled down for a good almost a week, and I said, okay, if I'm going to sell a listing, listing appointments aside, we can do Zoom calls, we can do things like that. But once I have someone who's trusting me to sell their property in this time, there's some things that I knew that we needed to have prepared to share with potential buyers to help them make a buying decision.
Can I pause you for 1 second? Just
Yep.
because I want to spend the time on this to get really granular. I
Sure.
do want to go back to one thing, and that was you talked about the pendings, right? And making sure that you are looking at active deals to keep them together. So let's talk specific about what are the things that you were doing? What are the questions you were asking to interrogate the stickiness of your current pending deals?
Yeah. So I knew that even if there was a mortgage commitment, or at least I was operating under the assumption that even if mortgage commitment was issued, that banks were going to be looking at the financial worthiness or the financial health of these prospective buyers all the way up to the closing table. So I went through every single buyer's agent and I asked them, tell me more about your buyers, specifically what do they do for work, where do they work, what is their history in. And sometimes I would get, okay, well, they work at a bank. Okay, are they a teller at a bank, are they at a call center at a bank? I wanted to get very specific as to what they do. I also wanted to know if they had any idea already if they were going to be furloughed, if they heard anything. And this was a continuous conversation. This wasn't just a one-time conversation. I also wanted to talk to the loan officer to ask them what is their bank specifically requiring them to do as far as making sure that they were lending to somebody who can fulfill their mortgage obligation. So with me understanding what system of checks and balances the banks were going to be doing, what specific position the buyers were going to be in, helped me to gauge the level of risk for each specific buyer. And out of all of the deals that I had pending, and there was a fair deal, there was only one that didn't come together. So it was just staying on top of it and keeping that conversation open.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you for getting a little bit more granular there. So let's fast forward to, okay, you have people that were planning to list that first week, right? Or you have people that in the next couple of weeks are planning to list. So how did you shift gears with them?
Sure. So I just went through my list of people that had committed or hired us to sell their property, and I already knew based on our conversations previously what their motivations were. So I knew I can kind of just by intuition know who is going to want to move forward and who would probably want to wait on the sidelines and see what the market brings. So it was just a matter of having conversations over the phone with my upcoming listings to find out, okay, what changes do you have? Tell me about your job. Tell me about your family. Tell me about your health. How are you feeling? What's going on around you? Just kind of gauge their mindset to see, are they in a sinking ship, or are they in a situation where they're just going to push through and life needs to continue in whatever way that looks like. So checking in and making sure to ask those deeper questions was really important for me to understand how I was going to be expected to support them and their family and their next steps.
And that gives you a gauge too, right? During that time of what was their comfort level with everything going on with the coronavirus, right? Everybody is going to operate under their own comfort level.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to make sure as agents that we are advocates for our clients and for their goals. And I don't want to impose my views on them. I want them to kind of impose their views on me when it comes to how they want to operate, right?
Sure. Yep. And the other thing is I use that time to help realign their expectations with the fact that even a week prior, I could say with pretty much clear, not certainty, but it was it was easier to break down what was most probable to happen in a market by using data and numbers and whatnot. But making sure they understood if that motivation was still high, that we're operating in uncharted territory. So that might mean for them less showings. That might mean for them that we have to realign our expectation for sales price and asking price, and that, and to really educate them as to where they might need to make those necessary mindset adjustments.
I vividly remember the very first listing that we had go live after the New York State pause. And these were clients that mutually you represented, Alex represented on their buy. They had just gone under contract on a contingent offer for their next home. So they had to sell. And so they knew they were going into this with a high sense of urgency. And they had a lot of trust in us to figure this out for them. And I remember you had a very open conversation with them about the fact that this is brand new for us. We don't have any data around what could happen here. So this is my best guess. And I don't love working from a best guess scenario. We're a data team, right? We love having data and numbers to be able to predict what will happen. And that wasn't the case here. Now, we were pleasantly surprised by what happened, but I want to give you kudos because I think you did a great job in terms of lining up the pins, if you will, to create what happened.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your process.
Sure.
And how you prepared them for success.
Yeah. So one of the what was in my mind the whole time was just something that I heard as young as when I was a kid, is an ounce of prevention equals a pound of cure. And it was almost like, just instead of prevention, preparation. So what I wanted to do is, because again, I wasn't sure if what I was going to be able to offer a buyer as far as showing the house, getting them a feel for the house, having a property inspection. So assuming that it had to be completely hands off, assuming no inspection could happen, no nothing. There's a couple of things that I did. First of all, I broke it down to the visual representation needed to be on point, so that a buyer who's a visual person can use the marketing tools that we created to get a feel of the house. So the visual representation included pictures. Now, this happened in a time where I could still have a professional photographer go in and take really nice pictures. Matterport, which is a great tool, room measurements, just to get a feel of the space and the layout. So making sure that the visual piece was done, describing the house in our remarks, just describing the neighborhood, describing the feel of it, describing the charm and the character, because this is a house that's over 100 years old.
Can I pause on the visual piece for a second too?
Yep.
So for those of agents that might not know what Matterport is, can you describe it?
Sure. A Matterport is, it's almost like a home tour where you can click room by room and you get a 365-degree view of a room. You can get really close to things. You can look up, you can look down, and you can turn around. So it's as close to having a virtual tour as you possibly can. So
unlike the videos that are out there, this is self-guided, right? Where you can choose where you want to turn your head and where you want to walk through, right? Yeah. Matterport is one technology. I think there's a few others. That's just the one that we have access to locally. So, okay. Yeah. And then let's pause on visuals too and talk about what types of photos were you having either the client, because there was a point where we couldn't have professional photographers. It had to be photos that the sellers took, right? We weren't even allowed in the homes. We had to get photos from our sellers. Yeah. So what were specific things that you were asking them to take photos of in addition to the standard room shots?
Yeah. Well, so just to kind of give some clarity on that, what I was doing to help them prepare the property is they would take pictures of every room. I would say, give me corner by corner. So opposite corners, send me pictures of the rooms to my cell phone. I would download the photo, I would circle the things that needed to be moved, hidden, changed. So we did virtual staging that way. They would move it. And then I knew that their house was ready to be shown and that I was offering them the guidance that they deserve to make sure their house looked amazing. So that's the first piece. From there, I broke it down to the visual representation and the visual technical representation. So I gave them a checklist of things that I specifically wanted photos of. And the technical came from, I read through like a dozen home inspectors reports, and I broke down the pictures of things that they would need that they could have access to, minus like crawling on a roof. So they did the visual technical, and then they did the visual representation. So kitchen, where to stand, standing in the corners, living room, same thing. Just tried to guide them through what they needed to do. And then we found a photographer that could take the seller's cell phone pictures and edit them so they looked better. So that was a really great kind of boost to the pictures to make sure they still looked really good.
Awesome. And then the technical piece, the visual technical piece you're talking about, did you have a checklist of what you were working off of, and what are some examples of photos that you had people take for that?
Yep. So what I did is I told them it was almost like a visual scavenger hunt. I said, okay, dedicate the next hour to an hour and a half to complete the seller self-assessment checklist, which was a checklist of every mechanical and system structure in their house. And I asked them to rate how it worked. And they did the checklist, and then I wanted them to do the visual checklist. So take pictures of, turn your sinks on, open up the cabinets in the bathroom while your sink is running, take a picture of the sink, take a picture of the plumbing, close-ups of the foundation, sump pumps, electrical panels, furnaces, anything that a buyer would want to have their eyeballs on to see how it actually looks and to capture the condition. I had them go through and do that, everything from the outside, even the hose bibs and what have you, to the inside of the crawl spaces to make sure there was no mold or mildew or any kind of funky stuff in the crawl spaces.
Awesome. So you really put yourself in the place of a buyer and said, if I'm a buyer, what are the things that I want to see when I'm walking through a home for a showing? What are the things that I want to see? Normally, as listing agents, we have a visual hat on from a marketing perspective. How can we make this home look beautiful and magazine ready, right? You didn't want to lose that quality. You still wanted to do the virtual staging with the client, and you needed to pull in that buyer experience of, it's not just about looking pretty. It's about, show me the good, the bad, the ugly, show me the guts of the property, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
And so from there, what we did is we packaged it up, and we put those right as an attachment with the seller's permission on the multiple listing service, so that we were being as transparent as possible and helping buyers agents advise their buyers so that they can move forward with the best decision for themselves.
So transparency is a great word, and I think that's so key in this, because this is new territory for listing agent, selling agent, buyer, seller. So transparency is huge.
Yep.
Yeah. And the more you can prepare up front, the better.
Yep.
So let's talk about the inspection piece a little bit, because you've mentioned the visual technical photos. What did you pair that with? Because at this time, if you recall, right now, home inspectors are essential, and they can go in a property and inspect as long as buyer and seller are not home. At that point, and there was about a 2-week period where home inspections were not allowed. So we were listing a property knowing we had to, 1, find a buyer that was okay not seeing it in person, and 2, find a buyer that didn't want a home inspection.
Right. Yep. So that was the checklist that I referenced. I read through a bunch of home inspection reports, and I just wrote out, let's just say, for example, when you're looking at the condition of, I don't know, what's on a home inspection report.
Like a driveway, right?
Yeah,
you're looking at
marginal. I would ask them to look at it and rate it good, very good, marginal, poor, and then if there's any specific defects, almost like a property condition disclosure, only way more involved.
Like a self-evaluation.
Yeah, absolutely.
A real honest seller, right?
Yeah, and then any notes associated with anything, I wanted them to look at every corner, nook and cranny of their house, and be able to take, to the best of their ability, what is the condition, is there any repairs needed, and I think that it was important. It also gives buyers, I think, a little vote of confidence that we did our due diligence to make sure that we're accurately depicting the house in general when we put it up, and ask for them to make a commitment to us and purchase this house sight unseen.
Now, the other thing that we had going for us with this is, this client purchased a home with us 4 or 5 years ago, and we represented their buy. So we had a copy of their inspection report that we were able to review and make sure they were comfortable with us giving that as well to the new buyer, right? Not everybody's going to have that. So if you don't, ask the question, maybe the seller does have a copy of their original inspection report.
Yeah. So 1 out of, I don't know, 5 that we've put under contract since this whole thing happened has had their inspection report. The other thing that I have them look for their documents. So abstract title, obviously, But also the survey in our area, surveyors are not able to access the database to pull the original survey so that they can update it. So if they have that survey, that's going to help expedite the process for when they're actually under contract. So educating them on what they need to look for is really going to help once you're under contract.
Okay. And the last piece regarding home inspections, and we can move on just because things have changed and things are very fluid. Now, New York State is in a position where home inspections are allowed with certain conditions happening, right? No one else is present in the home. The home inspector follows health and safety guidelines in terms of hand washing, gloves, masks, all of that. The other thing that we could recommend now that home inspections are allowed is a seller hiring a home inspector to do an inspection for them that we can then hand to the buyer and hope that the buyer would forego a home inspection on their own.
Sure, absolutely. And I think that the other benefit of doing it that way is things change so frequently, as we've seen, that, yeah, right now they're essential, but who knows? And I think that being able to plan ahead of time is just going to be for the best for everyone.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's move on. Talk to me about what else you did to prepare your clients for success.
So we made sure that the house was really well portrayed and everything was good there. And then it really came down to marketing the house and putting it live on the MLS. And what we had to do is I had to coach my sellers through how to give their own tour. So I would be on, this is fast forwarding to you're under or you're listed. Yep. And so what I would do is I would list, and then within 24 hours, I would have a Zoom call as almost like a group showing, like you would do on a multifamily or rental property. So for example, it would be Thursday at 2:00. Potential buyers agents would register to be there with their buyers. So it's me, the sellers, the buyers agents, everyone's on a Zoom call. And so I would have the seller and I would do a dry run about an hour prior. I would tell them to stand. We would start the tour at the end of the driveway. They would scan the neighborhood. They would walk up to the front door, and I walked them through specifically how to hold the camera, where we're going to go. I would speak, they would walk, and we would get it done that way. And there were some things that I learned about doing group showings via Zoom that I can share that might just be, helpful tips.
Yeah, please. I'd love to hear those.
Yeah. So be ready with room dimensions because people will ask you. The other thing is I made sure to turn off the password required for agents because not everyone is familiar with Zoom, and the more steps to access the video, the harder it is for people. So I wanted to make it as easy as possible. So they would get in, I would mute them all because again, Zoom etiquette, not everyone is really up with that. Alex
is asking, do the sellers use their phone or laptop?
Yeah.
For the tour?
No, don't use your laptop because when you're using your laptop, your Wi-Fi is spotty. So make sure to use your cell phone and turn off Wi-Fi. You're going to want to use your data or whatever it is. So when you're at the end of your driveway, if you're on Wi-Fi, you're going to cut in and out and it's going to be a disaster. So I ask them to use their cell phone and pick either your landscape or you're not, but moving, it's nauseating. So pick whatever you want to do is fine with me. I would have them walk through. We'd do the main living area, the upstairs, the downstairs, the basement. I'd have them turn all their lights on so that they can walk from room to room and it's illuminated. And then I would ask buyers and the agents to message via the chat function when they had questions instead of them chiming in. You can't control what people are going to ask you, so I'd prefer them to send it via the chat, and then I would read out the question and answer it that way.
So that's another really good point that I want to pause on for a second and make sure we give it enough space here. And that is the way you constructed the virtual showing for the group, where not everybody was allowed to talk. You muted everyone except for yourself, right? Was your seller on mute or no?
Was not on mute. And there were times when I would say, okay, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, a question just came in about whatever. I can't speak intelligently to that. Can you please chime in and add some color? So they were ready for that.
Okay. So the seller was able to speak, you kind of coached them to remain silent unless you asked some information from them, right?
Right.
During the tour. And then one really important reason, if you have 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 buyers and their agents on this group Zoom call, we want to avoid groupthink, right? We want to avoid one buyer's bad experience or bad opinion influencing another buyer that might be having a really great experience through it. So I think that was key too. And then being able to type in questions gives you control of how you want to answer or in what order you want to answer. Right?
Yep, absolutely.
Alex has another question. Has anyone asked anything you felt uncomfortable answering on a public call, like an awkward question calling something out?
The only questions that I've had is, do they have pets? Does it smell like pets? Which, you know, and then the other question is do you negotiate on price? So, not really.
A price question, right? Not a question to ask or discuss in front of the seller. That's really agents. We can absolutely talk offline about stuff like that, but bring us an offer.
Buyer questions. Buyers are going to ask whatever. They don't always know. So the other thing, just to go back, is we created a how to use Zoom PDF. So if a buyer's agent or a buyer or a seller does not know how to use Zoom as a tool, we didn't want that to be a reason for them to not participate. So we created a document that they can use to just kind of go through and answer frequently asked questions of how to use this tool, because once you do it once or twice, it's super easy, but it's not always easy for everyone, and it can be a little daunting starting from never having used it.
Now, the other thing I remember you saying was a learning up front in terms of setting this virtual showing up, this group showing, was make sure that not only did you email or have our showing service, right, email the buyer's agents the Zoom link, but also text the buyer's agents the Zoom link. Tell us more about that.
So I did that manually. I didn't find something to do to automate that.
Okay.
So in the morning of the showing, I would text it out to all of the agents one by one that they have the link that they can send it. Sometimes it's easier sending it from your cell phone. And people check their texts more frequently than their emails sometimes. So I wanted to make sure that they had it on their email, they had it on their text message, and that it was easy for them to find.
Okay, and so one big reason for that is that you want to make sure you're not trying to field agents that can't get on to the Zoom as you're going through this tour, right?
Right.
You need to be focused on the tour. Now, and you're recording the tour, correct?
I record the tour so that I can send it out to people that might not have been able to get on the tour, and it downloads in an MP4, at least on my computer. The other thing that you're going to want to do is make sure to, when you welcome people to your Zoom call, introduce yourself, let them know that the host name is Susan Glens. You're going to want to find Susan, and you're going to want to hover your cursor over her screen, find the 3 little dots, select pin this screen so that Susan's screen is the largest and you can actually see the house. So that's another thing that I walk people through how to do, so that they're not looking at a grid of people and trying to look at a tiny little icon of a house.
Got it. So when you kick off the Zoom, you're setting what the expectations are. You're letting people know you're going to be muted. Use the comment box to type questions. The seller is the host. Pin their screen, right? You're setting that up for success.
Yep.
Okay, great. Is there anything regarding the virtual tours and Zoom, group showings that we haven't covered?
No, I think that concluding the Zoom is just thanking everyone and letting them know that I'll be following up with their agents, and then following up and making sure that that everyone knows, what the next steps look like and who to follow up with whom. So that's usually how we do it.
So let's talk now about virtual showings with physical showings, because every state's different in terms of what can and can't happen in terms of physical showings. And we obviously want to make sure that we put health and safety first and reduce or eliminate, if at all possible, all person-to-person contact, right? So there may be some states that are allowing person-to-person showings. New York State right now is in a place where they're allowing buyers and sellers to coordinate showings. As agents, we have to step out of it. I have my own opinion on that subject, but we won't get into that piece right now. Let's focus on the person-to-person, getting a buyer in a house. Sometimes we've heard of contracts that are written that says, once this offer is accepted, buyer has 24 hours to see the house. And that's the buyer's way of letting the seller know, I want to get in. And the seller can choose to say yes or no, right? But that's a contractual term that they're writing into the contract. The only reason I bring it up is because I think that knowing we want to make health and safety number one priority, even if your state is allowing people to get into a home, even if it's written in a contract that the buyer wants to see the house and the seller can choose yes or no, I think a good standard of practice right now is to make that virtual showing that first pass, where there is no opportunity to get into a home at all, no matter what, unless you go through this virtual tour, because that virtual tour could likely screen some people out that say, you know what, I liked it from the photos. It was different in terms of layout. I'm good, right? We want to, and I think even after the market opens back up and people are allowed to leave their houses and go out more, I think we're going to see that that's one of the trends that stays with us, that we aren't letting people into houses and having our kids, our clients get the kids out and the dogs out for a buyer that just on a whim wants to see it because it looks cool, right? We've screened them with a virtual showing process. We know they're serious, and now we'll let you in the house.
Sure.
Do you think that's a trend that will continue?
Yeah, I think that it's a really good practice. I think the virtual showings will scrub out the folks that take a look and realize it's not for them for whatever reason. It'll minimize the displacement of our sellers and their families out of their homes. And I think that it'll give us more of one thing that I've really liked about the Zoom calls is that it creates almost like a roundtable conversation where the buyers get questions or answers to their questions in real time. And sellers feel more of a part of what's going on. So I really think that it's been very valuable.
Yeah. Alex commented, I know she's on mute, but she said buyers, agents everywhere are crying and cheering. Kind of like a double-edged sword, right? Like that we won't, if that happens and this trend does continue, they won't have to go in as many houses, right? Because they'll be screening out from the virtual tour, but maybe crying a little bit because they feel like part of their job is taken away. Is that what you mean, Alex?
And the thing with even a listing agent is now I'm present for the showings, whereas before I wasn't. So it's a whole new thing. So one of the unexpected gifts that I'm pulling from this is that knowing my sellers' homes inside and out, so that I can, when they're walking through with their cell phone and I have a group of people watching what they're watching and listening to what I'm saying to help them understand this property, I need to know this house really well at a much deeper level than I had previously. So,
and let's pause there for a second, which by the way, Alex said, no, they're crying happy tears because they're not, going from house to house that isn't going to work out. But let's talk about the knowledge of the house for a second, because it's not like you didn't know your properties before.
Sure.
Right? You knew your properties well. You priced them well. You sold them at a great price, and you knew what you were selling. And something about this process where we have to just know so much more because the buyers aren't in the home just makes you be on your A game even more.
Sure, absolutely. I find myself asking deeper questions. It's just different. Whereas, especially when you do a high volume of, well, there he is.
Hi, Taco.
High volume of listings, solid information, and you have your notes to refer to, and you have everything you need to answer questions, but you just need to internalize it at a different level when you're going through room by room. So
yeah. It's funny because I was thinking the other day about how this whole social distancing thing is actually creating this really interesting digital intimacy. Right? Like we're actually getting closer to our sellers in a way because of the number of Zoom calls we're having and the level of information that we're going is just that much deeper. You even made a comment that these Zoom meetings that are not in the seller's home is actually in a way making you slow down and bring you closer to them. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah. So as a listing agent, maybe it's just my personality. I find that when I walk into somebody's home, I am very purposeful. I need to, you know, they're there for me to tell them and share with them. And I guess I didn't really stop to think about this, but I was more of a show and tell, I guess. And now I have to.
You had a plan, right? Like you had a plan. You had a plan.
Yeah, I had a
proven
plan. The very most amount. I wanted to get the most and give them the most that I could out of the time we had together. And in this time, I have to have a much greater understanding of what brings us together. What is this going to look like? So that, because I mean, buying and selling in this world right now is different, and it takes a different type of motivation to say, yep, I'm in, I need to do this, this has to happen, and it needs to be now. So I just had to slow down and have just deeper conversations.
Yeah. Well, and it's this whole pause is a slowdown, right? Everybody is slowing down. So it's just about, what are we taking from it? What are the gifts we're taking from this slowdown? There's one more thing I want to add, and then we can open it up for questions to the amazing Alex Cope. And that is this. I lost my train of thought again. You know how I do that from time to time? It's like a bird and it just flies away. There's been some talk among the real estate community that, sellers taking their own photos, sellers doing the tour, the virtual tour that you're leading. Is that showing them that they can do this without an agent?
So
and it's kind of this philosophical debate, right? I have a definite strong opinion, and before I share mine, I would love to hear yours.
yeah, so I think about, I don't know, just off the cuff, I think about, we're a team. We've always been a team. Buyers, agents, sellers, sellers. We're a team. We're working together to get this done. And I think that, I'm not really big on sports references, but here I go. That a quarterback, you could be a great quarterback, but without your team, you really don't have, you're not doing much. You know what I mean? Yeah, you have the skill set and you can do a thing, but it doesn't fully come together unless you have the people who specialize in what they do best to make sure that you have a game. And what I bring to the table is definitely, like, I am their consultant. So yeah, can you take a picture? Absolutely. Can it be a beautiful picture? You have a professional camera? Fantastic. But the picture without the knowledge of how to implement and utilize that picture and market that picture is really just a picture. You know?
Yeah. I think that it's exposing to our buyers and our sellers more than ever before how hard we work behind the scenes and what all goes into the strategy of listing their home or helping them, buy their next home. I think that they're getting a glimpse behind the curtain. And I think that they're saying, well, I know that they're saying, because we've had some of ours tell us, I'm so grateful that you've been by my side. Now, we've had them say that to us forever, right? Before this whole pandemic happened. And the way it's coming at us now is in just a different way. I was lost. There's no possible way I would have known how to navigate selling my home without anyone stepping inside of it. In fact, if you had asked me if this would be possible, I would have said no. And you were able to guide me to get multiple offers and sell my house over asking during this time. Thank you.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. I think overcoming adversity together is something that leaves a mark.
Yeah.
It really bonds you together. So
it's about showing up and proving our value more than ever, I think. And I don't think there's a risk of them saying we don't need an agent, because our value is very much kind of in their face right now in a good way, right? And there was a great quote that I heard and I shared with you guys. So this will sound like a broken record, but for those that are watching or want to watch this in the future, it might have been Gary Keller that it was the first to say it. And he said, or maybe it was even an agent in our office, I can't remember now. This is not a seller's market. This is not the same seller's market that this was before this started. It's not a buyer's market either, right? It hasn't shifted to buyers get to take their pick and name their price. this is an agent's market. And the agents that can tap into the needs of their sellers and buyers and help them achieve their goals in a safe and healthy manner they're driving the market right now.
Yep.
So buyers and sellers need us now more than ever, I think, is the final takeaway.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there any questions that we haven't covered that agents are asking you in your circles or clients are asking you that you just want to share as far as final tips?
I think that the only final tips that I would say is adapt quickly. And I think that it'll leave a memorable impression for your sellers when you can say, you know what, this just happened and we've got a plan and we're going to roll with it. And really just, I guess, the materials that we've created, making that accessible, because I think it can be really helpful. No, but other than that, I think that just breaking it down to the parts and pieces of the support that you give and just converting it to virtual. I mean, that's really where it's at right now.
So on that note, you mentioned some of the pieces that we've created through this process. Is it fair to say that if someone would like to ask us for any of our tools that we've created or examples, we're happy to share?
Absolutely. So we have copies of the seller self-assessment. We have the photo checklist. We have the how to do a Zoom meeting and how to be an attendee to a Zoom meeting. And then I have recordings of virtual tours that we've done just to give you some ideas of what to expect and how to brace your seller for how they'll participate.
Awesome. One last question. And that is, what is the one gift that you're most excited to bring forward when the market opens back up again? What's the one thing you don't want to let go of that you learned during this time?
Yeah, I think that regardless of how fast life gets, that you still need to slow down for the people who are trusting you. And I didn't even realize how much it matters when you just slow down and really dig deep. That's really my big takeaway.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I echo that. And I think that one of the things that it's probably my biggest takeaway, one that I definitely want to bring forward outside of some of the personal things for me around slowing down and finding certain pieces again that I had given up, right? We talked about this, like cooking and other things like that. If I'm going to stick to business, it's this whole virtual world of video Zoom calls. I mean, we were prepped as a society for it, right? With FaceTime, with other apps that video is becoming more common. But man, if I had bought stock in Zoom, I mean, Zoom just really is a platform that helped us all stay connected during this. I'm on probably 8 to 10 Zoom calls or meetings a day between this team, the Keller Williams Gateway office and our clients. I mean, it's just kind of a new cadence of communication. Yeah. And we're having virtual happy hours. We're doing all that fun stuff. And that is something that I want to carry forward. And I can see us having the first step with our clients, whether it's a buyer consult or listing consult, be a Zoom call.
Absolutely. I would love that. So I think that's another big takeaway, and I'm excited I feel like it's made my business more robust in the way that I offer solutions to my sellers.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Chelsea, thank you for your time today. Alex, it looks like you might be off mute. Do you want to add anything? She might not know she's off mute. Okay. Well, if anybody would like a copy of the information that Chelsea referenced, feel free to shoot us an email. You can email susanglensteam@gmail.com, or you can email Chelsea directly, chelseamoffett@kw.com, and we'll make sure to hook you up. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
Thanks.
Bye, guys. Bye.